Hmm? Ah! Oh.
Lizzie, what are you doing?
I'm putting magnets on the fridge. What do you think I'm doing?
Welcome to the show. My name is Alex. Say that again. My name is Alex.
I'm so sorry. I'm Lizzie. Why
and
am I
today,
muted?
and today we have the man of the hour when it comes to From, the one and only Douglas Hughes, aka the man in the yellow suit. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We got a lot to talk about, young man,
Yes.
and you have a lot to answer for. But before we
Yeah,
get
you
to
do.
all that, I just want to thank everybody for an awesome season. And if you haven't already, if you want to go onto our website, we've got our poster, we've got some new From Miss for Christmas shirts and stickers. And the time of this podcast, we're doing it over the holiday weekend. You can get a couple of bucks off. So, and if you haven't already, you can always subscribe to the podcast. So, that all being said, now that we got all the particulars out of the way, welcome to the Frumily. And we have heard so much about you. Now, I just want you to understand, we didn't know about you until we got to that, because we are week to week. So we kept hearing about the man in the yellow jacket. So could you just take us through, first off, how did you get the part and what led up to what happened?
Wait a minute. I want to add, were you the original voice that Jim heard?
No.
Okay.
But I will get to that. I actually auditioned for the series before the first season and read for a couple of different characters and got called back for both of them and then didn't book anything. So I thought, oh, well, that's that. And at the time, I didn't have any streaming services at all. So I never got to see the series, which was a shame, because after reading these scenes for the audition, it was like, oh, my God, this stuff is brilliant. I would love to do this.
Yeah.
But I never did. And then this spring, I got a call from my agent one day. She wanted to do an availability check from the middle of March till the middle of April. She said, do you have anything going on? I'm like, no, I've got nothing going on. She said, okay, well, just for the next 4 weeks, keep it open. And about 3 weeks went by and I didn't hear a word. So I thought, well, whatever it was, they must have cast it by now. And then I got offered a day's work on something. So I called my agent and I said, have you heard anything about that thing that I'm supposed to be free for? And she said, yes, you're still being considered. Don't do anything. I was like, okay, fine. And originally we weren't told what it was. I didn't know it was for From. It was just a random availability check. And we were told that they were going to be casting from audition reels. So my agent sent my audition reel in and that was that. But then shortly after telling me, hang on, you're still being considered, she called me back and she said, okay, they actually want to do a Zoom audition this Saturday. This was late in the week, like Thursday, Friday. And I said, okay. And I said, what's it for? And she said, it's a series called From. And I was like, oh my God. Yes. So, the tension just went like to here.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, pressure's on. And of course, it's a very short scene. And I hooked up with them on Saturday afternoon. And I think it was Jack. I'm pretty sure it was Jack. I can't remember. And I couldn't see him. I could only see me in the on the computer. So who knows? But anyway, he had me do it a couple of times. And that was it. I was in and out of there in about 5 minutes. And about 2 hours later, my agent called and she said, all right, you're on hold, which is normally the kiss of death. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been on hold. In fact, this just happened to me last week. I was on hold for something and it went to somebody else, right? So I thought, great, thanks for ruining my day.
Yeah.
And then about 10:30 that night, she called me and she said, okay, you're booked. And it was like someone just said, yeah, that lottery ticket. Yeah, you just matched all the numbers. And this was late Saturday night. And first thing Monday morning, I was on a flight to Halifax. So I spent Sunday frantically packing and signing up for Paramount Plus so that I could watch a couple of episodes. And
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I don't have a lot of time, so I was just going to watch the tops and tails of the first 2 seasons, which was all I had access to. So I watched the pilot and the finale of season 1, and then the pilot, and then the first episode and the finale of season 2, and that was it. And then I was there and suddenly on set, and it was like somebody pinched me, you know.
Yes. Oh my
So
gosh. We are waiting for that call. Like, we want to go so bad, but yeah. I love the little stories behind getting the part because it's just so magical. You never know where it's going to lead. And this show definitely needed like that one thing to focus on that's the big bad, you know? Um, it, like Alex said, we watch week to week
uh-huh.
and we podcasted at 10 p.m. on Sunday nights. We'd finish, most times just before midnight. And then the first thing that we would do is go watch the next week's episode,
Right.
just because it's so fresh,
Yeah.
And both of us, after that episode, that ending came out of nowhere. Like, I'm thinking it's going to end kind of happy a little bit.
Oops,
You killed off my Jim.
I did.
Well,
And I have to say, when I got the script and I read the scene, I went, it may be short, but it's pretty sweet. I mean, people are going to freak when they see this,
Yes.
I'm
you
going to
know?
tell you right now, Doug, and we're speaking with Doug Hughes, the man in yellow suit. There's a couple of scenes in this series. This one, the scene with Jasmine, the other one of the other monsters, and the scene with Smiley when he looks over the banister. And I gotta say, it has really shaped all the monsters in
Yeah.
the scariest way. And I'm not a horror fan. I admit it.
Me
Yeah.
I
neither.
Neither one of us are.
I'm just saying I don't like it. We became friends through The Walking Dead, but
Another word. Show.
which is another
Two
drama that I kind of
people
equate
that
with
are not
this.
horror.
Yeah. And I think whether it was a dream, whether it was real, whether it was whatever it was, Jack and John know how to write a cliffhanger.
Well, they
Yeah.
they know how to write, period. I mean, it was
Yeah.
interesting. I was watching an interview with Scott earlier today talking about when he auditioned for Victor. And he had his experience sounded almost identical to mine because of
Yeah.
course they just send you the sides. They don't send the whole script. So you have no context to put this stuff in.
Right.
And he said, I mean, I could have said the exact same thing myself. He said, he got the script and looked at it. And just from the brief scene that he was reading, without any context at all about the series, what it was about, anything, he said he was able to get a very strong sense of the tone of the piece, the emotional content, just a general intuitive sense of what it was all about. And that's exactly what happened to me when I read it. And for a
Yeah.
writer to be able to do that in a short scene like that, that just takes tremendous skill. So my
Yeah.
hat's off to John Griffin. In fact, when I was there on the day, I was so happy I got to meet him in person because I just went up to him and I said, "You're my freaking hero," because I'm a writer myself, and
Yeah.
I just marvel at the craft.
Yeah.
And Scott said another thing that is exactly the same as how I feel about it, and that is that the horror thing kind of takes a back seat to the relationships and the people. I
Yes.
mean, that's the
Yes.
thing that really that I focus on when I'm watching it. I mean, all that other
Yeah.
stuff's going to happen, but it's all about the people and how they deal with this unbelievable trauma. And it's just such excellent writing. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And that's what pulled Alex and I into The Walking Dead. And when I started watching it was like just me alone in the world because, the first season was nothing. Like, I mean, nobody knew about it, you know? And all I knew after watching it was that someone had to podcast about this. And that's how Alex and I came to podcast about this show.
Got it.
And I write as well. I have a zombie apocalypse series, despite the fact that I hate horror. But it's all about the relationships. It's like that stuff's just the background. That's the challenge at times, you know.
Yeah,
But it's the focus of what do these people do in the face of all of that, and then some. And
exactly.
that's what always gets me. And that's a big reason why I really liked the show so much. It was so rich and so complex and surprising because I think, Alex, and you can confirm, but both of us watched the ending of your episode more than once that night. And both of us had to be up early the next morning. It
It
was
was, yeah,
just,
it was definitely a WTF on the text, and then she didn't.
yes, it was.
I was ahead of her. But before we, because I do want to talk about some of the other projects you did, because you've been in some pretty big franchises. Maybe it's one or two episodes, but you've been in some pretty big franchises that we love.
Uh-huh.
What information other than just slashing the slashing poor Jim did you get about your character? Or I know Jim, I know they're pretty close to the vest in terms of characters.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I had virtually nothing. What is in the scene is basically what I knew. And
yeah,
again, because of John's writing, you can infer a great deal even from that very short scene. And again, my hat off to him for being able to do that, you know. Um, so I didn't feel ill prepared or anything like that at all. I had a very good sense of, I mean, you know, you'd have to be an idiot not to figure out what's going on.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
it was pretty clear. I mean, I got a little direction from Jack in the audition, of course, but that was pretty minimal. But
So to that point, have you had a chance to watch the whole season? I mean, all
yes,
the
oh,
episodes.
yes,
Okay.
I've as soon as I booked this thing, I signed up for Paramount Plus.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah. No. I mean, I know you
I
were like
watched the whole
rushing to
thing.
kind of get it. So we asked a bunch of the listeners. We have questions, and most of them you can't answer just because it's just no time. But in the first episode of the second season, when Harold slash Boyd is talking to Martin, he talks about this greater entity.
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe as a viewer that the yellow man is that greater entity?
Well, I have to admit, I'm not anywhere near as good at making the connections that everybody online seems to be when it comes to this series.
You know what, Doug? Neither am I.
Yeah, I am amazed at what people have managed to put together. And no, that would
yeah,
never have crossed my mind. My only
yeah,
sense of this guy from reading the scene was, okay, I don't know exactly where this guy fits in, but clearly he's upper management, whoever he is, you know?
yeah,
He's up there somewhere. I don't know if he's the number one guy or the number two or whatever, but yeah, I mean, the mere fact that he can walk in here casually in the light of
During the
day
day. During the
says a
day.
lot, you know. So
yeah,
yeah, I'll be very interested to see where it goes. Scott said another thing that really resonated with me because it's exactly how I feel. He was talking about how, you know, the members of the cast don't get a lot of advance information of what's going on. They sort of find out when they get the script. And
yeah,
he said, you know, it's one of the things I really love about the series is that the audience is finding out all of this stuff at the same time as the characters. Like it's all happening in real time. And sometimes as a viewer, you're a little ahead of what's going on or a little behind, but for the most part, your experience is almost identical to what the people on screen are going through at the exact same time. And there's something about the immediacy of that that I think is really seductive, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we just um we just marvel. Like it's hard to not, well, because I take it apart almost sometimes second by second when I'm writing my notes. Like, you know, I don't know if you've seen any of my videos. I don't think that you're sitting there like, ooh, what is Lizzie doing? But the notes for each episode, it takes me all day Sunday. This is the first Sunday I've sort of had off in 10 weeks. And, I sit right where I'm sitting here and I sit there with the iPad and I'm like almost sometimes frame by frame or, line segment by line segment because all of it is so finely nuanced. And there is something like even in the inflection that you can pick up that is meaningful. I I just can't get as deeply into the theories as all the fans do.
Right.
I do have
Really?
some. Yeah, I know it is shocking, but the way I end up doing it is I'll focus on something and I'll fit it in, and it's like, all right, there you go. I just send it off down the river. Sometimes I forget about it, sometimes I don't, but I'm
Doug,
not
never
often.
did you. If you step the wrong way, it means something. If you pick a
It
cup of
does.
coffee up, it mean to her. To me, I could care less, and that's why I am so much like you. I have to go online and find some of these crazy theories. But I do want to go to that scene, just in terms of how many days did it take, or was it just a one off, or did you guys get in the first try, or and how were the FX?
We shot it in an afternoon.
Really?
Yeah.
Said 2 days.
Well, I was there for 2 days because the first day I had to go and get all the makeup and they had to work the costume and stuff. And of course, all that stuff
Yeah.
had to get approval from Jack. So that took a
Yeah.
very long time. And there was more of that actually on the day, the morning of the shoot. And I had
Yeah.
to have a fight rehearsal with the fight director to work out what Ian and I were going to be doing. So,
Yes.
you know,
All right. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because I mean, I work on set, so like I see characters come in, come out, whatever, and know what they all go through, or some of them anyway. But I thought that the fact that they picked this yellow suit for you, it allows you to have an iconic name. Like back in Massachusetts, where I'm from, there's a yellow man, and he wears yellow all the time. And he's, some older guy that just walks around all the time. But there is a yellow
Nuance to
man.
your character. Maybe it's the same guy.
you just
I
reminded
know.
me, you just reminded me of something. I don't know why I haven't made this connection before. Many years ago, did a bike trip across the United States and went from LA to St. Augustine, Florida. And I was in New Orleans for Christmas and taking pictures around town. And there was a guy dressed, this tall, slim black guy with this beautiful yellow suit on and matching hat, just kind of posing. And I thought, oh, I got to get a picture of this. I should post that actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Nobody believe it. Nobody believe it.
there's
That's probably
some people that just stand out like that.
that trip's probably a podcast unto itself. Um,
Oh,
going
yeah.
through that must have been an interesting thing.
This
Um,
was 7 weeks after 9/11. So, yeah, it was a
Oh,
very
wow.
interesting trip.
Yeah.
we that's all. Like I said, that's a whole nother podcast.
Indeed.
But in terms of you've seen the show. I know, like you said, you're not as detailed. You said that the yellow suit. It was new when you got it, and they really wanted to kind of do some different things with it to kind of make it a little bit more rustic, if you want to call it. And
Oh, I knew they were going to break it down. I just
yeah,
found it
Yeah.
ironic because, of course, they didn't get. I mean, I literally sent them my measurements, I think, on Sunday.
oh,
And
geez.
they had like Monday to start putting this thing together, Tuesday to fit it on me, and then Wednesday we were
Yeah.
shooting. So I mean, the clock was really ticking. I mean, and this thing was, I had just had a made to measure suit made last year. So I was able to send them an incredibly detailed list of measurements. So this
Yeah. How
beautiful
convenient.
linen suit that's absolutely
Yeah.
made to measure. And the whole time they're fitting it on me, I'm just thinking, the irony of this is as soon as they're done, they're going to take it and go throw it in the garbage for a little
Pretty
while.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the reaction of the cast? The cast that was either on there that day or just in general behind the scenes, like, oh my God, like what is going on?
The only other people that I saw that day were Hannah and Ian. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I crossed
Yeah.
paths with the boy in white as he was on his way to do something, but I don't even think we got a chance to introduce ourselves to one another. Yeah, that was it. And that's one of the strange things for me now, because watching all of this stuff online, I mean, they call them the Frumily for a reason. It's clearly a really tight knit group. And I still
Yeah.
feel like an outsider because, the only two people I've met are Hannah and Ian. So it's kind of a weird place to be. Like when we go back in the new year, that's going to be a bit of an adjustment, I think, sort of fitting into this really tight knit group.
Well,
But the thing was, we've had other actors from the show on, and they've said the same thing, that they've been on for a season and have just met so and so, and more than one. So, I mean, you know how these things go. Like,
Yeah.
you could work forever. You could be the star of the show and still never work with one particular person that everyone is talking about.
Yeah.
The suit, the suit seems somewhat modern considering what the possible um settlement time is for.
I'm not entirely sure about that, actually. It's
Really?
very loose fitting. I mean, it's a suit that you could plunk it into certain parts of the 20s, the 50s, maybe even
Yeah,
the 30s, and it would still fit in,
that's what
um,
I'm thinking. It's like a
even the
zoot
90s
suit
for that matter.
almost. Yeah. But what I meant is that we've got the settlement over there that is clearly like early colonial.
Hmm.
And we think that it was those people. We don't know, it was those people that that did the sacrifice of the children.
Right.
So it makes me wonder if your character updates his wardrobe. I kind of think he's the devil, like he almost looked like Fred Sanford coming down that hill, from Sanford and Son, with the dirty suit and the dirty undershirt. Other than that, you look pretty sharp.
you look like you knew too much, and I think I've said this from the beginning. You guys are playing chess, and the survivors are playing checkers. I
Mhm.
mean, you definitely have the upper hand in everything. Um, a lot happened in that episode. We got so many answers, and one of the biggest problems that the fan base has been, oh, we're not getting answers, we're just getting more questions. Well, if you didn't get enough answers on this one, then you're not watching the show. I mean, we
Yeah.
had a character come back in Smiley, we had a rebirth, we had Fatima finally delivering, we had Sarah, going to town. I mean, and then you show up and yeah, I mean, what is your take on the whole world? Like, why do you think that, as an actor slash just regular person, what do you think why are they there? Or do you think they're going to get out?
Well, if they get out, that's the end of the show.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that, but
Um, I honestly don't know. It's I was making a joke on the day when I was there because I think there was a threat of an IATSE strike or something going on at the time,
okay.
and I
Yeah.
said, I've got the perfect ending for the series. You have this big climactic scene with everybody that's still left in the town together, and all of a sudden this convoy of transport trucks come in, and it's all the IATSE guys saying, it's okay, we settled, we can get you out of here, come on, get in the truck, let's go.
That's
Yeah.
perfect. That's perfect. No,
Oh my God. Yeah. Those strikes. I
it's
mean, work is still slow here,
Yeah.
like slow. So we'll see what happens. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I
Alex.
mean, in
Sorry.
Halifax in the winter just sounds like a joy. So, I mean, you didn't have to bear all that literally. You weren't at the table readings, you weren't on any of that stuff. So, a lot of the other actors were saying it was definitely a harsh season for them. I mean, going back to even Scott. Scott wasn't even supposed to be in. He was supposed to die in the first season, and then,
Really?
oh yeah, no, I didn't know if you knew that.
No, no idea.
And then
Thank
they
God
brought him.
he didn't.
Well,
I know.
I mean, he basically acted himself into a permanent role, and you couldn't think of the show without him.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, he is such a perfect cast for that part. And my personal feeling about that role, is that it's the most complicated, interesting, fully developed, challenging, mesmerizing role of them all.
Yeah.
I take my hat off to him. I marvel at what he does with that role, because playing that kind of character, someone with that kind of depth, is such a challenge. So yeah, I think
He's just, yeah.
he's the best.
Oh my God.
And
Like,
it's hard because
it's
you
just
talk to him,
amazing.
in real life, and he's just so like articulate, and he's the exact opposite in the show. So yeah, he's been very good to us. He's given us a lot of interviews, and yeah, no, we just love him to death. And
I can't wait to meet him, because he just seems like a lovely guy, you know?
Yeah, he
Mhm.
is. He really is. Just, he's gotten some really complex scenes that he's had to play, beyond just, what we normally see. And I'm wondering what's going to happen with you in that regard. I mean,
Uh,
are you just going to be a straight on bad guy?
who knows? Who knows?
Yeah,
You know, I have no idea, and I probably won't until I get a script in my hands.
yeah,
Which is
Well,
fine with me. I mean, it's interesting. I said in another interview that I'd like to meet John and get some idea of, what the character's future is going to be. But actually, I'm not so much interested in that. I'm much more interested in his past.
yes,
I would like to
yeah,
know everything I could get from John about where this character came from, and doing a little research on my own in the meantime.
yeah,
But yeah, I would be fascinated to hear what his idea of this guy is, because at this point, now that I know that he's going to be on, fairly regularly, um, it was easy to fly blind with that one short scene,
right,
as magic
right,
that
right.
may have been, but carrying a character through a whole season is a different thing.
My
So
my prediction is that your character is the one that made the deal with the monsters.
that seems to be a popular
I mean,
theory.
yeah, I know I'm going out on a limb. I'm going on a huge limb there. Breaking news here.
Alex says.
Yeah, it's just it's so breaking. But yeah, like I said, back in season one, season two, episode one, they had really set it up. And what really drives me nuts about this show, in a good way, is we probably have the answers in the opening thing. We
Hmm.
just don't know what they mean yet, because that picture of the yellow man was sitting in front of us every week for 3 years now, and we just had no idea what it means.
Now, that's
Yeah,
interesting you should say that, because the only time I saw it was in episode 2 of this last season.
Oh, was it? I have to relook. I could be wrong, and
I
I
think it's in the opening credits, but
I've
it,
looked as soon as we
okay,
and
shot.
you
maybe I'm
haven't
wrong.
seen
Okay,
it, right?
you know what? After a while, it all kind of blends in.
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. There's a lot of it, but no, I think the only time, because like, you could have slapped me, or you could have knocked me over with a feather
Oh
when
my
you actually
gosh,
showed up
wait a minute. Yeah, because
in the
like,
second episode.
yeah, I don't think Victor has seen the Yellow Man, and this was just what Miranda was drawing.
It was, yeah,
Now that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. Now I'll tell you a little story about that image. After we finished shooting the scene, Jack came up to me and he said, "I want to show you something." And he had that image of the man in yellow on his phone. And that's when he told me that he actually does a lot of those images himself. He drew them.
Yeah.
And I looked
Yeah.
at it and I said, "Well, you got the ears right."
Well, people are pointing out that it looks like Randall.
I don't see that myself. I mean, yeah, we both got sort of prominent ears, but trust me, if you put the two of us side by side, we don't look like each other at all.
I
And
I
Maybe.
know if you take off your shirt, you have washboard abs just like he does. You don't have to. You don't have to. You can be modest. I mean, you don't have to be that modest, but
I'll tell you when I did have washboard abs. When I did that trip across the states, I lost about 15 pounds. I was eating about 5,000, 6,000 calories a day, and I lost 15 pounds. I
Oh
mean,
my
I
God.
was a stick. And that was the
Wow.
first time in my life where it's like, hey, look at me. I got a six pack.
There you
But,
go.
but
There
that was
you go.
23 years ago. So,
Well, it hasn't been that. Oh gosh, I don't even want to think about that.
hmm.
But yeah, no. I mean, it's been great to figure out. As Lizzie likes to say, a puzzle show. And I just love the fact that they can always bring a new character on and change the story, but at the same time keep it in the direction that they've been going, which I find really fascinating.
Well, this harkens back to something you were saying earlier about some of the viewers being disappointed with with this season because they weren't getting enough answers. And I mean, yes, that's an inherent part of the series, unraveling the mystery. But for me, I'm not particularly concerned about that because I'm far more
Yeah.
interested in the relationships and how they're developing. So,
Yeah.
even if a particular episode doesn't have a lot of reveals in it, I don't care.
Well,
I'm much
Yeah.
more interested in, how Boyd and Donna are getting along and stuff like that.
Yes, that has been a fascinating watch. They go from fighting, like they have an established grudge against each other, and now she's crying in his arms, but even just her, like being so tough, and now she's beyond vulnerable. It's scary. Like,
Well, and I think that being underneath the tough exterior has been there kind of all along. And I think that's one of the great things about Liz and her portrayal of the character is that that's been apparent to me, at least from the get-go. It's like,
yeah,
she's like a really old oak, very, very strong looking on the outside, but like
yeah.
there's a lot of a
she's
lot
a
of
tough
damage
old
inside.
broad. I mean that in the most respectful way. Now,
Yeah.
have you worked with? It seems like the Canadian actor community is pretty. I mean, tight in the sense of, have you worked with any of the other actors in the cast, even though you didn't work with them during From, but have you worked with them before in other
I
projects?
actually I actually spent a year with Cliff Saunders at Stratford. We worked together for a year and did
Oh,
a workshop
wow.
together while we were there. And I'm trying to remember, I may have actually been introduced to Liz like at a party or something like that, but this was 15 years ago. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know Cliff quite well. He's a great guy. I've never worked with Deb Grover, but we've known each other for quite some time. I've seen her in stuff and she's seen me in stuff, but we've never actually worked together. But that's it. Everybody else is new.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. I mean, Cliff's death was pretty interesting.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, yeah,
You are not
exactly.
nice to Cliff, damn it. You are not
Yeah,
nice to him.
yeah,
I sent him a note after I saw that. I said, just saw episode 5. Cliff, you rock.
Yeah,
yeah.
right. It,
I mean, the greatest thing I think to come out of this show is exposing all these extremely talented Canadian actors.
I can't
Like,
say enough about the stable of actors in this show. I mean,
oh,
for me, this show kind of fires on all cylinders from a writing point of view, a direction point of view, an art direction point of view,
yeah,
and the cast. I'm thrilled to be a part of such a great stable of actors.
I was
yeah,
saying to Lizzie, it's going to be interesting 5, 10, 15 years down the road to see some of these actors who, for a lot of them, this is where they're getting their start, for a bunch of them. And to see them become these bigger actors, and you can say, oh, we knew them when. And it's just it's I mean, obviously the Heralds and the Ians, I mean, they're already established stars, but you have someone like Hannah who is just, I mean, she was a child actor. Now she's transitioning. I mean, this was a big season for her. I
Mhm.
mean, they had a lot of, and I have to say, I think one of the biggest problems with this season, I know I use that word, is this was a hard season to watch in terms of there was not a lot of happiness.
No, indeed.
I
No.
mean, it was like, okay, can we just get beat over the head again this week? Um,
I was there for it. I was like, let's go.
yeah, well, I mean, I think coming out of the gate, killing a beloved character didn't help.
Hmm.
And then it
No,
just went from worse to whatever I mean, the most satisfying thing was you showing up because at least we have some kind of answer,
Yeah.
even though it's not an answer yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think we've only been in Fromville for like a month.
Yeah, I've got to get on that and figure it out
It's
because
not been very long that like
no,
the time span that from the Matthews being there to where we are today is not that long of a time.
Really?
yeah,
Because my
yeah,
sense of it is considerably longer than that, but who knows, you know?
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it seems like
I've
it has, but
yeah,
no.
I've gone through and counted days as I do rewatches. At the end of season one, we're only up to day 9. And then when the trio is knocked out with the cicadas, like that is a 4-day thing. That's like the biggest time jump in
Uh,
the whole series is 4 days.
Yeah.
you know, seeing the seasons change, which of course they don't have any control over, it does sort of give you a sense that, you know, maybe more time has gone on than that. But again, who knows, you know?
Well, I
Yeah,
think the best thing that happened and the worst thing that happened was the strike for the show.
Hmm.
In the
yeah,
sense of it flipped the script because you didn't want to, who wants to film in Nova Scotia in the winter, but it really created a whole new angle to this show that um I think has been absolutely awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think they've done a great job with the elements and making winter its own character, so to speak.
Yeah. Although I suspect they're probably going to wait till the weather gets a little better next year before they start.
yeah,
But I don't know. Again, I have no
No, no,
idea.
I know. And that's why they said 2026. And you know, as they usually release in the February area, so that gives them from spring to spring to fall do what they need to do all the editing to drop it. So I think they just want to get back to that.
Yeah.
Um, and again, as a person on the outside looking in, because I'm breaking news left and right here,
Yeah.
with all this stuff. So
Well, I keep seeing online all these people going, "Oh my God, I can't wait 2 years." Well, it's not going to be 2 years. It's going to
it's
be,
not 2
you know,
years.
it's almost 2025 and it's going to come out
Yeah,
in early 2026. So it's a little more than a year. And I mean, we got to shoot the damn thing, you know. So
yeah,
how dare you? How dare you? It's not like it just happens like that. But that actually is an interesting point. We're all a little bit more seasoned people, and we're used to actually having seasons, and we're also used to breaks. And nowadays with streaming services, everything gets dropped all at once. I mean,
yeah,
what Jack and John have done is they've really created an old time network show. The only
mhm.
problem is we're not dealing with 20 episodes, we're only dealing with 10, which is something that I have a problem with. But that's just the way of the shows these days because of the budgets and everything else. But
Exactly. It's the whole streaming thing has really had a profound effect on how stuff is produced these days.
it absolutely has. The I don't like the shorter seasons in that I always want more, more, more. But what I do like is that the quality of shows has just increased. Like
Mhm.
it used to be shameful and embarrassing to say that you watch television, when we were just dealing with the 3 networks. And those 3 networks just don't seem to have gone beyond, that model. But when all of this cable stuff started and stories became like 3D
Mhm.
and intense and like so worth the investment, and I'm glad of it. Like there's so much good television now, like I was always a television person, always.
Well,
I had to fight it.
I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not, but my and I don't really know what the situation is as far as the network is concerned, but I get the impression that John and Jack and the other writers who contribute have a tremendous amount of control over the scripts. And it reminds me of something my writing partner told me about years ago. She went to a conference out in Banff, Alberta. It was some TV and film industry conference, and there was a woman there from the BBC who was a guest speaker, and she gave this speech, and then she was taking questions afterwards. And one of the people in the audience, most of whom were from Hollywood, said, "What is it about the way you people create stuff that, the quality is always so excellent? Like, what is it that you're doing differently?" And she said, "Oh, I can answer that very easily." She said, "The scripts that we get from the screenwriters, that's what we shoot." And everybody out in the audience from Hollywood was going, it's like, what are you talking about? What about those 20 pairs of hands that all the scripts have to go through? No, we don't do that. Now, I understand it's not necessarily the case anymore in the UK, but at least this is 20 years ago, maybe. But I just found that really interesting when she told me that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, at least now the gloves are off, the fences are down, and we can actually fully explore things. And it's not in an effort to be graphic in any way, but it's just the quality and the intensity. That's like, the scene that you came in on, I just don't like, that would have been so tame in comparison in the old days. And,
Yes.
I
Well,
watched
many
it.
into the show this year. I mean, we've had some. The monsters are crazy this year. We've had more like attacks with the monsters, and like that scene with Patrick is the FX guy. I mean, he went nuts this year compared to the last two seasons.
I have to say that scene where Boyd was handcuffed to the pole and had to watch them,
Yeah.
tearing apart.
Mrs. Lou.
Oh God, it just my heart was in my
That's your
Awful.
fault, by the way.
Sorry?
You're responsible for that. I want you to know we're holding you personally
I know it's all
responsible
my
for
fault.
all of that. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope you're happy with yourself. No, it's funny though. It's funny because we saw the trailer, then they had a second trailer, and it drives me nuts because we watch these trailers and then there's all the explainer videos, right? That are explaining the trailer. And we both say this all the time. It's purposely making us go into a direction that we shouldn't go in because that's what the trailer does. And then we find out what it actually was and all the scenes and how they were flip-flopped and everything else and turned around and you're like, "Oh." And that's why I mean, yes, I love talking about the show, but sometimes you just got to, have your drink of choice and just like wait to see what happens. Betty Davis said it the best. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, and it's funny you should use that phrase because I used it myself in context to, well, actually, I was talking to a friend who hadn't seen this episode yet. And I was quoting, it was from one of the Harry Potter movies, the one where he takes the night bus.
Yes.
There's this little Jamaican shrunken head at the top.
Yep.
He says, "It's going to be a bumpy ride."
Absolutely.
I was passing that on to my friend saying, yeah.
Now, Doug, I'm so glad that you brought up Harry Potter because I usually weave it in to every single podcast. I'm just such a not a huge Harry Potter fan, but it's a big part of our life, my life, I should say. And I just love the fact that you brought that up. But I do, before we get into any more about From, I do want to talk about a couple of your other projects that you've done in the past. Because you've been involved with a couple of franchises that are pretty close to our listeners' hearts. And, one of them is Umbrella Academy. And you were in, I'm assuming, I know you were only in one episode, but, can you kind of just, give us a little experience of what your experience was on Umbrella Academy?
That was a really interesting one. I've never seen the show myself. Again, until From came along, I literally had no streaming services. I got Disney Plus for a while so I could watch Only Murders in the Building, primarily. But the whole streaming world is like completely beyond me. So I went into that absolutely blind. I had no idea what the series was about. I mean, what we were shooting, it was the teaser at the top of an episode, and it was essentially a commercial. But there was so much tech involved as brief as it is, it took us, I think, about 3 days to shoot all of that. It was really, really complicated technically, but the director was a great guy, and it was a fun experience. But I really kind of had no idea what it was all about.
Right. No, and again, like I said, I mean, I've seen you in Lock and Key, which are not we, but the podcast network that we're part of. They podcast on it, and I'm just looking through it, and it just seems like you've done a lot of different things in terms of characters.
Yes.
What type of character do you enjoy the most? I know it's the last one.
It's well, yeah. Yeah, this one, well, I mean, it's really too early to say with this one, because I mean,
Right.
it was a minute and a half, for God's sake. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. This is, I see this as manna from heaven, this thing, but it's really too early to comment on this one.
Yeah, of course.
There
No,
have
but
been lots of things.
yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking about this earlier today, that right from the get-go, even when I was in theater school, it was like I was getting told, all right, kid, you're a character actor. Get over it right now. That's what you're going to be. The problem with being a character actor is nobody writes a lot of character roles for 20-year-olds. So when I got out of
Yeah.
theater school, there wasn't a lot of work to be had, because it's just wasn't, those kind of roles just didn't exist. So it took a while, and I always knew this was going to be the case. I never had any illusions about becoming an overnight sensation. I thought my career is going to be a very slow, gradual, incrementally building kind of thing. And if I get to the point where I'm working regularly, I'll be happy,
Hey.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's kind of how things have borne out. And I was at the Shaw Festival for 13 years. And for those who don't know, the Shaw Festival is a repertory theater company in Southern Ontario. It is the second largest repertory theater company in North America, the largest being the Stratford Festival, which is also in Southern Ontario. But
Interesting.
the time there at Shaw was amazing, because I got to do such an incredible variety of not just roles, but genres, periods, accents, you name it. Then they started throwing me in the musicals, just to keep me on my toes. And I just
Yeah.
loved the fact that I got to do such a broad variety of things. In
So
terms of,
you really like having that audience right in front of you, don't you?
well, I mean, for most of my career, I was primarily, both as a writer and an actor, it was primarily for live theater. You
Right.
know, I did a little bit of TV along the way when I was younger, the odd episodic and stuff like that. There was a period in the 80s where suddenly I started landing a whole bunch of TV commercials, which kind of came out of nowhere.
Right.
That was a weird experience. I guess the one benefit of that was that it was a quick way to get comfortable in front of a camera. So it was helpful in that sense.
Right.
But it was a very strange period, because like my face was on TV all the time, but nobody knew who I was. They didn't know my name. I wasn't a character in a series or anything like that. So it was this weird sort of minor key version of celebrity, where people would constantly be staring at me on the street. Or I remember this one day I was walking to the subway, and this guy's on the other side of the street, and all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, you're the guy on TV." What the hell? Stuff like that would happen. So I was on another podcast and I was joking. It was kind of like, all the unfortunate sides of celebrity without any of the good stuff. And
Right.
so that was a strange thing to go through, but that was kind of a blip on the screen, because after that it was mostly, and even during that period, most of my work was doing theater. And then COVID came along, and that did it, both as an actor and a writer. Everything got put on hold. So I quickly built this thing beside me, which is a recording studio, and started doing a lot more voiceover work, and gravitating more towards film and TV.
Well, it's funny because a lot of the other actors that we've talked to from have had that not similar experience, but they're just working actors. I mean, I actually didn't even realize. I was looking at your list of things. I mean, I've listened to your voice. My daughter is 9, so she listened to the Cat in the Hat. We did that because we talked to Liz. She was Mrs. Turtle for all those years, and it's just funny how you don't recognize who you're listening to until you actually get to meet them. So, but as my wife says, she doesn't like the cat because the cat's always getting those kids in trouble. So you're always getting people in trouble with everything that you do, Doug. I swear, it's like, give me a break. But anyway, we're talking to Doug Hughes. He's the man in the yellow suit. Everybody wants to know if you have one of the biggest questions as a joke is, do you have a Curious George just waiting to be around you? And do you have a big hat? Those are some of the questions,
I saw a few references like that on some of the stuff online. I was like, what the hell's that about? Oh yeah,
Oh
yellow.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
But
no.
yeah,
What has
no.
all that been like since last Sunday? What has that been like for you?
Unlike anything I have ever experienced in my life, I have to say. Now, the funny thing is, most of it's gone past me. It's not like, suddenly I have 500,000 followers on Instagram or anything like that. It hasn't been like that at all.
Yeah,
So I just sort of feel like I'm on the fringe of this thing, but
yeah.
just seeing, going online to check out the response to the show, I guess I should have had an idea that it had such a huge ecosystem online, but just finding that
Yeah.
out was a bit of a shock, to find out how incredibly popular and I mean in a worldwide sense that this series is and how invested people are in it, you
Well,
know.
the one thing about this series, it's like the show that they keep plugging. That first season, not that many people knew about it. The second season, people are still starting to get used to it, and now this third season. I mean, we've been like I said, we were the only podcast really podcasting about it from the beginning, and
Uh-huh.
now this season, it's like from Screen Rant to whatever, everybody is podcasting and everybody is talking about it. So, and I have to say the actors are very, very supportive of each other in
Mhm.
terms of projects, in terms of everything that's going on. And that being said, I know you're a writer and you have something coming up, I believe, or
Well, actually, my writing partner and I are working on a new play right now, which we just finished the first draft of last week.
yay.
Ooh,
It's a little three-hander about identity theft. So, a cheery little drawing room comedy. Um,
yes.
but our most recent play is the one that I thought might be worth mentioning, just because it kind of has a sort of general thematic similarity to From. I
Okay.
mean, if you put the Venn diagram of these two stories has a fair amount of overlap. It's about two playwrights who find themselves trapped inside the murder mystery that they're writing.
Oh, wow.
So they find themselves transported to this place that they can't get out of, where people are dying, and it's all about how the hell do we get home. So, like I said, a certain amount of overlap.
Yeah.
And
That's
it had its premiere just over 2 years ago, November of 2022, at the Human Race Theater Company in Dayton, Ohio. It was published earlier this year by Broadway Licensing. So if you're curious to get a copy, just go to broadwaylicensing.com and look up Deadline and you'll find it.
awesome.
So yeah, we've been trying to get a second production, which is always the hardest part with a play, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
We're still working on that. So
Well, who knows? Next thing you know, it'll be on Broadway.
from your lips to God's ears.
Well, as a Broadway goer, I got to tell you, it really is one of the most amazing places to be. But like you said, COVID has made it even crazier to try to get in there because the prices are unbelievable. But there really is nothing like live action
Mhm.
stuff. I mean, when you get to see that and and it seems like, and Lizzie, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the actors in this, with the exception of the two or three big stars, I mean, you guys are just plugging along, working actors, and you just love the process. And this is what you guys do. I don't. I know that sounds kind of silly, but you're just all great working actors, and it's just fun to see good people getting good success.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But you're saying that puts me in mind of something I was thinking about earlier today. Um, I've written a couple of novels actually, which have not been published, but they came about because this is something about being a working actor in Canada that I've thought about for years, and that is the central irony of what I do is that I've spent my entire adult life working in this extremely public medium and doing it in absolute utter obscurity. And
Yes.
I was doing the dishes one night, listening to the evening news, and some story came on about some celebrity having been behaving badly. I can't remember what it was. And I found myself reflecting on this again about how I've been working in this business my whole life and nobody knows who the hell I am. And suddenly I had a new thought. I thought, when you think about it, we would make the perfect spy. I mean,
Yeah.
look at actors. They're comfortable with improvising. They can take on different roles. They get access to places that a lot of the general public often doesn't get access to. And let's face it,
Yeah.
who would look at a theater actor and suspect them of being a spy? I mean, it just wouldn't happen.
Well, it's
So,
funny
yeah.
you should mention that. During the Civil War,
oh, I know.
they did hire actors, and there's
And during World War II, there were film actors like
Yes.
what's her name? It's gone right out of my head now. But yeah, there were
Marlena
sorry?
Marlena Dietrich.
No,
Um,
no.
Well,
Terrible with
let's
names.
are you
see.
talking about the
I
woman
think
that?
Henry
Mata
Fonda.
Hari.
Oh,
Mata Hari.
Yes.
Mata Hari. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of his
There were a
name?
few
Like,
others, yeah, but those are
Clark
film actors.
Gable.
Yes, Clark Gable. But these are film actors we're talking about.
Yeah.
Theater actors, that just doesn't come up. So anyway, that's where the idea for the book came from. Books, I should say. There are two
That's
of them.
awesome.
Yeah.
That looks like good stories. Is it like a
A
spy
comedy
thriller
thriller.
type thing? Comedy thriller.
Yeah.
How could
Both
you
of them.
not love that?
Yeah.
I wish
Well,
I could write comedy. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I am really, really funny, but I cannot write comedy.
the legend.
Well, that's most of what my writing partner and I have written. We've written 7 plays now. This most recent one is not a comedy at all. It's quite a departure for us. But 2 of our plays so far have been murder mysteries, but they both have a fair degree of comedy in them. The other 4 have been straight up comedies. So that's
awesome.
kind of
Wow.
home base for me.
That's that. I mean, geez, that's again, it's so fascinating because we've talked to pretty much everybody in the cast,
Uh-huh.
and everybody from the one-off characters, like, or I should say, he's really not a one-off character. Bob Mann, who was on a couple of episodes in the beginning, to the established ones like Liz. Everybody has got their reason for being there, and they've got everything that they do, and it's just really fascinating because I'm not part of this world. Lizzie's more part of it than I am, and I get these emails, oh, I'm on set or this or that on stuff because she's down in Atlanta doing her thing. But it sounds like, is it more Toronto or Ontario that is just a big cultural hub for theater, or is that fair to say, or is it more?
Yeah, Toronto's kind of like New York City, in the sense that, you may not work there, but if you want to get work, it's where you have to be, because there are lots and lots of regional theaters that will come to Toronto to do their auditions and stuff like that. And of course, a big theater scene in Toronto. Although I have to tell you, my writing partner and I have a number of plays that have been produced in Poland, and I've now been over there 3 times to see a number of productions in Warsaw. And the difference between the 2 cultures when it comes to live theater is unbelievable. I mean, everybody goes to the theater.
Wow.
And it's everywhere. We have one of our plays is doing a national tour of Poland right now, which started in the fall of 2022, and they're booked up until the middle of next year. And it's an open-ended thing. They'll keep doing it, I guess, as long as they're still making money. And you look at the size of the country and you think, how can they support this? It's a relatively small country, a relatively small population, but everybody goes to the theater. It's much more a part of the average person's life than it is in North America.
As a
I
writer,
seldom go.
oh yeah, no, we try to go twice a year. We save up our little pennies and go twice a year. But as a writer, how much, like you said, it's going to be in Poland, and you have do you have much, I want to say, control, or do you let them kind of, loosen the reins, or how does that all work? Because I have no idea.
Excellent question. There's actually a clause in the contract that every theater signs when they agree to do one of our published plays that says that they will not make any changes to the script without prior written permission from the authors, which just about never happens.
Right.
In fact, I can only think of one incident where a company was doing our second play, which is a murder mystery, and we wrote it back in the 90s, but they were doing it,
Now.
almost 30 years later, and they wanted to know if it would be okay to change the dates. And our publishers, Samuel French, sent them a very stern letter saying, no, you can't do that. And then they somehow got our email addresses and they wrote us, and we're like, yeah, sure, no problem, But
Yeah.
but that's the only time I can think where somebody actually asked for permission. This national tour in Poland that I'm talking about, my writing partner and I went over to see it last November. They had a big gala performance in Warsaw last year, and it was quite possibly the worst production of that play I've ever seen.
Oh my
The audience was loving it. The audience was lapping it up.
Was
The
it
show
was
was
it because was it a language? Was it because of the language translation, or it's just bad actors?
well, I wouldn't be able to tell you because I don't speak enough Polish to answer that question.
Really, that's a good thing then.
Uh, but our translator was sitting right beside us, and she was just as horrified as we were. No, I wouldn't even say bad actors. Most of these actors were very well known actors, and in Poland it's different. If you go to see a play in Poland, it's kind of like Broadway in this. It doesn't matter where you are, but it's kind of like Broadway in the sense that, well, if you're in the big cities anyway, that the people you're going to be seeing are well-known TV and film actors as well as
I see.
stage actors.
Oh.
So all of the people that were in our show were quite, household names in Poland. And although they do a lot of TV and film, they also have a lot of experience in theater. I think the problem with this production had to do with the director.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a farce. It's a straight up farce. It's a farce about two women that have a lingerie business, and the English title is "Who's Under Where."
I
Which-
loved that. I saw that title and I was like, how clever.
Well, we can't. Neither of us can take responsibility for the title because we didn't come up with it. It was a friend of Marcia's, my writing partner, Marcia Cash. It was a friend of hers that came up with the title, and we just went, "Thank you." In Polish, it's called "Damski Business."
Oh, there you go. That sounds even better. That sounds even better.
So yeah, no, I've seen a few productions around, and yeah, almost always you're going to see people taking liberties with the script, and that's just the way it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, plus,
Oh, wow.
actors interpret it a certain way too.
Oh yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I have no problem with that. That's that's my job a lot of the time. But yeah, it's just when as a writer, everything you do for a very specific reason, and I think a lot of people don't realize when they make those changes that it's the way it is because we went to a lot of trouble to get it right, and if you don't do it that
Yeah.
way, it actually changes the story.
Right. Oh God, and it's frustrating. I'm wondering though, well, you've attributed it to the director, but I was wondering even um like the the personality that Poland would have would imprint on any productions that you've written, that it would come across differently.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. And, we've had productions now, I think, in 16 different countries, and that's always going to happen. We actually went to China about 6 years ago to see two productions of our first murder mystery in Shanghai and Shenzhen, which is right across from Hong Kong. And yes, I mean, the culture is so different there that, yeah, that's going to have a
Yeah.
profound effect on the play. And that's fine. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. And it opens up a lot of interesting possibilities too,
Yeah.
and it was fascinating to see because, here in North America, you go to see a murder mystery and the crowd is basically always going to be a blue rinse crowd,
Right.
In China,
Yeah.
they were all 20 years old. It was amazing. It was like
Yeah.
North American plays to begin with are all the rage, but murder mysteries, it's like this recent discovery in China and they just go crazy for this stuff. So,
Well,
It's so funny.
the best podcasts. I mean, the number one podcasts right now are like those cold case type podcasts.
Oh God, true crime.
True crime is like the biggest
I'm
thing.
hooked.
So there's your next thing. But I did
Yeah.
want to ask you this. Being a working actor for so many years and being a writer, I don't want you to pick which is better, but what do you like about either? Or
oh, that's an interesting question. I think Marcia was also an actress when we started writing together. Shortly after, well, I guess before we even finished our second play, she was already moving into directing, and she's basically been a theater director for most of the last 30 years. Her husband's a theater director as well. But when we started, we were both actors. And I think both of us, for the longest time, thought of ourselves as either actor or director first and playwright second. But since COVID, we've spent, there was nothing else to do. So we started working on all kinds of projects together. And we've spent so much time writing that the two things have kind of become equal. And they both have, it's hard to say which is the better, or which is the one that I prefer. I guess I feel most at home with acting just because that's what I started with. I was a professional actor for 11 years before we started writing. But today, I guess I feel equally comfortable with both. And they have different benefits, I guess, different things about them that I like, but they're kind of apples and oranges. So it's hard to say.
When you get to travel the world because of your writing, that's pretty good.
I'm sorry? Yes, absolutely. And that's been an unexpected fringe benefit of that, We had no idea when we started that was even on the table. We just wanted to see if we could write a play,
Yeah. The challenge is what gets it all going, just knowing if you can.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, we're at an hour, and I don't want to keep you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time and introducing yourself to the Frumley and to us. And you have more probably interesting stories than we could probably shake a stick at, which is amazing because that's what this is all about. And I think that's what really, in the 5 seconds or whatever it was that you were on screen, it really makes people intrigued on what this person is and what you bring to it. And
huge impact.
I mean, you took out, and it's funny because when it comes to Jim, there's the love-hate relationship with him right now.
I love him.
There's people that love him, and there's people that not so much love him because of what he did this season. So you actually, for some people, you were a blessing, and for other people, not so much.
To me.
So, but like I said, we want to thank you. And, anytime you have anything, please let us know because we'd love to, be able to help you out and promote it. Not that you really need us since you're going all over the world. My Polish is a little off these days. And I think her Mandarin's a little off too. So.
Czy mówisz po polsku?
Exactly.
Yeah. I did that yesterday.
But like I said, thank you so much for your time. And folks, like we always say, if you want to get our posters or you want to support the podcast, our stickers, all that good stuff is on our What Is From site, What Is From shop site. And we have our season 1 tribute poster. We've got our sticker.
I saw that online, and I wanted to say, just seeing the opening today for the first time, seeing all that art, I love that art. It's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of it is, most of it is the studio photos and stuff like that. We just kind of cartoonize it and all that kind of stuff.
No, I love the aesthetic. It's great.
We gave you a little 90s look with the triple look of you, but you just came in like a house of fire. So because
I thought it was a little Warhol-y.
Yeah, a little Warhol-y. Yeah.
I would love to get a copy of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Don't worry. We'll talk to you after. But because you had to do what you did, we have a special treat just for you. We always end the podcast this way. It's not just for you. But we always end with your favorite kill victim. And we'll see you guys later. The bell's ringing.
Get you home. Let's go. Come on, get in your house. Let's go. Come on.